For North Americans to understand their worldview, they have to understand the modern worldview, what it is and where it came from. We also need to understand it in order to understand the postmodern worldview. And Christians in particular need to understand both, because we're living in between them, and we're very influenced by them, and we're drawing up battle lines because of them. It's quite a mess, actually. The modern worldview, or modernity, hasn't been around for that long, but more than 100 years. And it's built upon a blend of Christian and Greek ideas. So let's start with the Greeks. In ancient Greece, the rocky soil and the hot, dry weather made farming anything but olive oil and sheep very difficult. So for their sustenance, the Greeks turned to the Mediterranean, to trade. Trade brought them into contact with many different peoples and many different cultures and all kinds of ideas. You can see how contact with different ideas might result in a people that came to value novelty and discussions around what's better, this or that. So the Greeks became a people who loved to debate, using reason to determine what was good and true and beautiful. And they valued excellence, excellence of all kinds, athletic, artistic, intellectual, political. And they really valued freedom, freedom of the individual to pursue their own life. So they built a society that loved freedom and novelty and personal achievement. Does this sound familiar? That's because it spread to Rome, and then the Romans spread it all over Europe. And through all this, it merged with Christianity, a synthesis that resulted in humanism and the scientific revolution, and eventually came to a full flowering in the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was an intellectual movement of the 17th and 18th centuries in Europe. An influential group of thinkers believed that the world would be better if ignorance and superstition were eliminated by the clear light of reason. You could say that Christianity was responsible in part for the Enlightenment, and not in a good way. The Reformation fragmented the church, and by the 17th century there was a lot of killing. Catholic Christians killed Protestant Christians over different interpretations of Scripture, and Protestant Christians killed Catholic Christians and other kinds of Protestant Christians over different interpretations of Scripture. And of course, this wasn't all about religion. Humanity doesn't usually need much of an excuse to kill each other. But Enlightenment thinkers naively figured that adherence to the principles of reason as opposed to religion would unify civilization and bring about peace. Who's going to go to war against someone over 2 + 2 make 4? That was their reasoning. Christianity is also responsible for the Enlightenment in a more positive way. The church taught that God created an ordered and predictable cosmos. The scientists of the scientific revolution, which prepared the way for the Enlightenment, believed that because it was ordered, the cosmos was predictable. You need an ordered universe for science to work, and Christianity offered them one. By the end of the 19th century, the Enlightenment ideals had coalesced into the modern worldview. And we had steam engines and the telegraph and light bulbs and dynamite. Reason had also been applied to humanity as we organized our societies with political, economic, and educational systems based on rational principles. We made ourselves into the objects of scientific study with the new sciences of psychology, anthropology, and sociology. We had left God behind us and set out full of optimism about where our new gods, reason, science, and technology would take us. They would lead us to utopia. In order to maintain this illusion through the 1800s, we needed to suppress or ignore the dark side of modernism. The desperate plight of factory workers in England, the destruction of indigenous societies all over the world, the plundering of Africa by Western nations, the rape of China by the same Western nations, who, I would argue, behaved like abusive drug dealers in all this. These things might have indicated that our modern view of reality might not be all that it's cracked up to be, but we didn't really look too carefully. This is the way it is with worldviews. Anything that doesn't jive with the master narrative is somehow not seen, at least not at first. In a nutshell, this is the modern worldview. God is dead, and human reason driving advances in science and technology will lead us to a better world. Let's go into just a little more detail here. In modernity, reason is God. When we isolate this characteristic, we call it rationalism. God is out of the picture, and human reason is the source of truth. The light in enlightenment is reason. Like Christianity, modernity believes in absolute truth. It's just that its source is exclusively human reason, rather than reason and revelation as it is in Christianity. Reason spawned incredible advances in science and technology, and it seemed as if our faith was well placed. It seemed reason would bring about a better world. Reality is material. There is nothing that transcends the material world. Or if there is, it has no relevance to one's life. In other words, there's no such thing as the supernatural, only the natural. And if human reason is the source of truth and reality is only the physical, then science is the path to discovering the truth. All truth eventually. But this only works in the material world. But to the modern, since that's all there is, there's no problem. I am my own boss. In the absence of God, reason moves into the driver's seat. And because I possess reason, I am free. No king, no church, no tradition, no peer pressure even should tell me what to do. I get to choose. You can see why democracy is such a big hit. Humanity is on an upward trajectory. This is because of human reason and its offspring, science and technology. Modernity places a lot of faith in progress. It has long believed that we need to get rid of silly superstitions and religious beliefs. Reason, rather than religion, will allow the human race to continue up the road toward perfection. And science and technology will solve all the problems that we face or will face. There is no God, but people have this annoying habit of believing in non-rational things. And to deal with this problem, the modern mind built intellectual boxes in which to contain these problematic ideas. Public, private, sacred, secular. We're getting to these in our next video. So that's the modern worldview and why it's still such a strong influence in our culture. But the 20th century was very rough on modernity. 2 world wars and a long cold one, a global depression and diseases, and the degradation of the environment. That's why our society has begun to reject the tenets of modernity. And this rejection is called postmodernity. If you want to know more about postmodernity, I've made some videos about that. My next video will be about the false dichotomies that we still like to think of as true, and that are causing so much trouble in our world. Thank you, and we'll see you there.